Our patience has paid off because we finally have some substantial Scream 5 developments to talk about, with the announcement of directors, a brief plot outline, and a potential filming date. So let's go over everything new that we've learned. Zach Cherry here. Guys, I started this channel because I'm a huge horror geek, and if you're like me, you might want to consider hitting that subscribe button and ringing the little bell thingy too, so you and I can become YouTube official. Just for shits and gigs, give this video a thumbs up and meet me in the comment section down below to let me know what your take is on all this new information that we just got in. So the biggest piece of news that we've got is that Ready or Not co-directors Matt Bettinelli and Tyler Gillett have been signed on to direct this movie. This is a duo who have exclusively worked together in the past, having done their own segment as part of the anthology horror film VHS, as well as several other films. It's always strange to me to see multiple directors attached to a single project, but knowing that these two have worked together in the past as one well-oiled machine alleviates some of the concern over that. Obviously, there are some pretty big shoes to fill since this has been Wes Craven's series up until this point, but it's almost better that we're getting a directing duo, as there was always a fear that ego would come into play if they had opted for a singular, well-known director who would be more concerned with marking their own name above the Scream title rather than respecting the work that Craven has already carved out for us. Having seen Ready or Not, I can say that was one of my favorite horror movies from last year, and I can safely say that the direction from that movie would actually work very well in the Scream universe. It's right on brand with what we've gotten with the past Scream movies, and I can see a lot of the same tone, humor, and pacing. If I had just one minor qualm, it's that I didn't find Ready or Not to be very scary or suspenseful. And I do have a little apprehension that this latest entry will once again be better at being funny than it will be at being scary, as Wes Craven was the key component that made the Scream movies frightening. Kevin Williamson's scripts even included notes saying that Wes will make it scary, so it's going to be hard to live up to the master of suspense. Speaking of which, on top of that news, original screenwriter, creator, and hell, the guy who wrote all the Scream movies except for that third one, Kevin Williamson, will be returning to the franchise to serve as an executive producer. There's no confirmation as of yet if he's written the screenplay as well, or if they found someone else to take on that responsibility. But we do have a brief plot synopsis for the first time, which might indicate that the script has already been written, or at least a draft has been written. The story will follow a woman returning to her hometown to try to find out who has been committing a series of vicious crimes. At first glance, that sounds a lot like it could be Sidney Prescott, once again returning to Woodsboro, meaning that Neve Campbell will be involved in this movie. But I should also point out that I've read many similar articles, and some of them state the same plot synopsis, but are specific to label that it is a young woman who returns to her hometown. So obviously Neve Campbell is not the young ingenue that she once was, at least not since the original Scream trilogy, as she's now all grown up with kids of her own in real life. So if you read the synopsis that way, it could mean that this isn't Sydney or Woodsboro and a completely new character and town in general, or at least a new character and the setting will still be Woodsboro. Another possibility is that the young woman in question is going to be Kirby Reed, as it was always the intention of Wes Craven to leave her fate up in the air at the end of Scream 4 in case they wanted to bring her back for future installments. I actually really like that idea more so than it being Sydney, as Kirby's a great character and has more potential to shepherd the Scream franchise forward into a new possible trilogy, seeing her character becoming the new star. And if you recall back in December, the Scream faction of the internet briefly blew up when Hayden Panettiere updated her Twitter account for the first time in nearly a year to reveal her new Kirby-inspired pixie cut, leading many people to believe she was returning to the franchise. But before you get excited, none of that actually means that any of this character stuff is true, as we just have the brief plot synopsis and it could literally mean anything at this point. They might choose to completely reboot the series and for it to be all new characters and do something more akin to the Scream television series, which personally I would not be a fan of, but this could also be some misdirection. Since Kevin Williamson is going to be involved as an executive producer at this point, you can definitely expect that this movie is going to be treated with the utmost care. We're also being told that production could start as early as May, which will probably mean that we'll likely see a spring 2021 release date. If they are following the same pattern that Scream 4 had, that film had an April 2011 release date. I don't think it will come out this year, but it should be noted that Scream 2 was filmed and released in a little under a year from the original, so depending on how fast they move, there is a small chance it could see a December release. Honestly, I hope not though. I would much rather they take their time with this one, as Scream 2 was kind of a fluke for how well of a movie it turned out to be, considering its super rushed production. We also have Halloween Kills coming out in October, so it might be better to allow for some time to pass before releasing Scream 5. This all does support my theory about Spyglass Media Group pushing Scream to be their flagship franchise, as this is currently the only project of theirs we now know is moving into production. That doesn't confirm that Spyglass will exclusively be a horror movie studio, which could pose as some heavy competition for Blumhouse, but as soon as they start working on Scream 5, they can then move on to the Hellraiser reboot, which has been good to go since last May. So we'll definitely be hearing a lot more about what their plans are moving forward with all of the Weinstein Company's movie library that Spyglass now owns. It does sound like Spyglass has quietly been working behind the scenes on Scream 5 for a few months now, so it won't be long now until we find out if any of the casting rumors that we've been hearing about have been true or not, mainly concerning the Big Three's return, despite Campbell's protests that she has not been contacted. If they are returning and this centers around a new, younger character, we might expect to see these legacy characters return to pass the torch on over. In any case, I have a feeling that this will work as a reboot and Scream 5, with the events of the previous 4 films still being considered canon in this entry, especially considering Kevin Williamson's involvement. And if a projected start date is only 2 months away, we're gonna start getting all the details very soon. So on that note, thank you so much for watching, guys. I've been Zach Cherry, and I'll be right back.